We are delighted to welcome Fernanda and Gabriel, the two parts of the artist duo Celeste, to San Francisco for their West Coast debut. This is also Celeste's first exhibition with the gallery, and we are thrilled that they are in conversation with Diego Villalobos. Celeste's work has been included in solo exhibitions at the Royal Society of Sculptors in London in 2024, the Contemporary Austin in 2023, Guadalajara 90210 in Mexico City in 2022, Project Pange in Montreal in 2021, amongst others. Their work has been included in group exhibitions at Museo Jumex in Mexico City, Mat Gallery in Paris, Laguna in Mexico City, Espacio Fama in Monterrey, amongst others. They just completed a large-scale public art commission entitled Casting a Net, Casting a Spell for the Bentway in Toronto, which opens at the end of May. Diego is a curator from Cuernavaca, Mexico, who currently lives and works in San Francisco. He's an associate curator at the CCA Wattis Institute for Contemporary Arts, where he curates exhibitions and public programs. From 2016 to 2019, Diego worked as a curator at the 500 Cap Street Foundation. Thank you all so much. Here we go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
First of all, congratulations and welcome to San Francisco.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's nice to have you in our neck of the woods. I think maybe the most obvious way to start is just to kind of talk about, what is Celeste? Like, how did you two came together, and like, how did this collaboration started? And yeah, kind of like, what's the genesis of the project? And then, like, as a follow-up to that, like, why Celeste? Like, how did you arrive to that name?
Okay. Yeah. You want to
You
start? Okay,
So,
so we started collaborating in 2020. Well, a little before that. At first, we were only doing one show together. We were not planning on becoming a duo. But we received this invitation to do a show in my hometown, Guadalajara. And it was just a nice place to try new things and experiment with a new way of creating. Gabriel had an individual art practice, and I had mine, but mine was private. So we had never collaborated before, but at that moment it seemed like a good opportunity to do. And then the pandemic came, and that postponed the project, and it really helped because it made us sit with the ideas that we were considering together. And eventually we opened our first exhibition in October 2020. And after seeing the paintings and after seeing the show, we decided to continue because we knew that there was more that we could explore there in that new space that we had created. Yeah, that's the origin story.
Yeah, that's the origin story. With the first exhibition that we did together, and we titled this exhibition Celeste. But before that, Fernanda and I, we were together for about 2 years before this invitation came. So, and also we were developing our life together and in the outside of Mexico City. Like right now we are based in Mexico City, but at that moment we started living together 1 hour away from the city. So we were the two of us only, and that period of time also gave us this chance to start this relationship, this living together, to understand ourselves differently. But also we discovered that we were enjoying to host family and friends. And I think that was a very important discovery during the time that it was previous, this exhibition.
Like hosting friends and family.
Like hosting friends and family.
Kind of like dinners or like.
Exactly, because as we were living in this small town, that it was we didn't have family there nearby. So it was basically Fernanda and I doing together everything. And of course, when friends and family came over, it was just incredible to receive them, to planning menus, activities, hikings, and yeah, we were very, very excited receiving, hosting people.
And this town was like a very special place, Tepoztlan, no?
True.
And
Close to
the-
your hometown.
Yeah, I'm from Cuernavaca and Mexico City, and Tepoztlan is like right in the middle. It's also May Day.
Oh wow, nice.
So yeah, May Day.
So,
you know?
International
May-
Workers'
Yeah,
Day.
workers in the world unite.
The progress.
But the immigration office is about a block and a half away.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
Okay.
We'll unpack that later. Yeah. But no, but Tepoztlan is this very like magical place between Mexico City and Cuernavaca. And it's this place that has attracted a lot of like artists and just really like people from all over the world for
Sure.
like has a very like rich history, like indigenous history. But also it's attracted a lot of folks that believe in either kind of like UFOs
UFOs.
or
Yes.
like kind of like new agey things. So there's a lot of interesting Europeans, at least primarily French from what I remember encountering. Yeah, there are a couple Americans there. So yeah, so then you were in Tepoztlan working there, perhaps a bit more like isolated.
Isolated.
And then you were hosting friends, and that suddenly kind of like emerged into some collaborative practice of some sorts.
So it's important, this anecdote, because it connects with the first show. When we first started talking about how would something that we do together would look and feel, what do we want to bring to the world in a sense? And the starting point was, let's show something that we already have, something that we have already developed, but just give it a new materiality. So our main idea when we were planning this show was to create, like bring our home environment to the museum. That was just like the trigger. Like how do we bring our living room to the museum, and we host friends in the museum, and we do dinners in the museum. And the first idea we had was to wrap the room in a curtain. So we were like, okay, Gabriel was working with silk at that moment. We were like, okay, no, silk is too fancy, something that feels more approachable. And we were like, okay, let's do cotton. And then we were working with the color palette, and we were doing tests with things that we had in our pantry to do like natural dyes.
So like condiments. And
Yeah,
Yeah.
these are not natural dyes, but
Exactly.
it's just the starting point for the palette was just like, what can you create with turmeric and with avocado and with all these elements? And we created the samples, and then the samples faded. You know, like because you need to fix them properly, and we didn't have the technique. But it was just like the starting point was this atmosphere of a house, and yeah.
Yeah, the atmosphere that from our house, you know, that was like the beginning, and then we just realized like about this palette of color that's from
And this palette of colors, kind of like what we see right now. It's kind of
Very
more like
similar.
warm, like earthy.
Like for
Earthy.
example, like earthly for sure, but for example with avocado seeds, you are able to get from a very light pink to a soft brown color. So it was like a wide range of possibilities. But yeah, it was like a kind of like very similar. But then like finding that we had like this warm palette of color, we realized that okay, as is this first project that we are doing together, and we are like trying to present like this like a possibility of the whole. We need to bring somehow like the other palette that is not present just by mentioning it. So then we picked the name of Celeste, and that was like our intention or our way to present this balance. We have like
And Celeste being kind of almost like a light blue.
Celestial blue.
exactly.
Yeah.
Celeste.
I know that because that's the nickname of my soccer team. They call it Celeste because of the color of the jersey.
Is it
Cruz
Azul?
Okay, we'll unpack that later. It's not about
Okay.
But that's what I know about Celeste.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So then you chose its opposite.
Exactly. Yeah. So
But I mean, it seems like so much of the work negotiates this kind of like balance between sort of kind of like the balance of the form in the sense that there's something rigid to just materials in general. But then you guys almost like soften it, kind of like bring its opposite to it. Like I'm thinking about the architectural forms that we have in this space. But again, by it being like a textile, like a cotton, it like softens it.
yeah.
So it's not like a fixed concrete.
Exactly.
It's its opposite that maybe addresses the body, but in a different way. So now that you've been collaborating for like several years, like how to maybe kind of bring it to this show? How do you see this exhibition maybe tying to some of your previous projects?
Okay. Yeah. So something that might not be evident at first glance when you see the pieces is that the way we're thinking of Celeste as a space of thought is that it's like a narrative that evolves with time. So every project, in a way, brings something new to our universe, our shared universe, and it evolves the shapes that we are working with. So, for example, like the fabric is our main material, and we started using copper in 2021, and those are like the two main things that we have worked with. Also, we work on paper a lot. But certain shapes will be present throughout different projects. So in this case, for example, I'm thinking of the shape of the main installation. At first we thought of it as a ribbon that would go across a space, and then we drew the arches to make it feel lighter. But the ribbon appeared after we were playing with the idea of presenting a curtain both in the physical space and in the painted space. So in a way, we're always kind of figuring new ways of presenting a shape or a form, and from there we can evolve it. Also, for example, the spiral is it was the main motif of our show in London. We had like a spiral that kind of wrapped around the whole room, and we recovered it for this one. But in this case, we're kind of including the spirals in this aqueduct type of shape that we have created. So I'm maybe going around in circles, but we first start.
You're talking about a spiral, so it's
Yeah.
So it's okay to go
Makes
back and
sense.
forth.
Yeah,
Exactly. The way we work is we always look at the space first, and then we react to the space by thinking of a way in which the fabric will transform it. In this case, we created these curves.
And is this like a conversation, like an ongoing conversation? Yeah. Can you maybe speak a little bit about the process, like how to? Yeah, like how does the decision making happen? Is someone in charge of maybe like the color palette, or like just how do you delegate responsibilities and resolve conflicts?
Oh.
Well, that's really a good question because like Celeste is this conversation that Fernanda and I we have. So anything else that we like or we decide and we want to bring into the Celeste universe is something that we need to talk. And we think that this is like the way is happening this. You know? And also because we are two and we have like different skills, like we can take care and we can be in charge of different like part of the production, and that's why also we can go like into big productions as well, because it's like each other is like let's do it, like it's
The energy multiplies.
The energy multiplies. That's like a nice reference. I don't know. Like, do you want to talk about
For example, Gabriel, he's in charge of dyeing the fabric. That's something that's his thing.
And it was something that it was just came at first with the first project. It's not that I'm like
An expert
or I was like reading before that. It was just like we have to do it because we decide.
Someone has to do it.
Because we just decided like to go big, like with the first project. So it's like okay, I can do it. So and I remember that also Fernanda at that moment was at her hometown in Guadalajara, and COVID was just started, and everyone was just like in panic because we were like locked down and everything. So I was at the apartment. At that moment, we were already based in Mexico City. So because Fernanda was away, I was like in charge.
The one in charge of dyeing.
Of dyeing. And since that moment, it's something that I do. And I really enjoy like to do this process and to learn how to bring shapes. I something that I like when I'm doing that is like the ripple from the waters like became like part of the textile and also became part of
Here you can see
the
it.
painting sometimes.
Like how when you dye, you can create bubbles of air that will kind of change the color, so it's not a flat surface. And we always start with fabric that already has some information on it, and that I think really helps to make the colors come alive. And also not starting with a white canvas, no? We color the fabric, but like the rest of things, like I'm in charge of like computer stuff. Mostly, you know, like
Yeah,
the
well.
archive, like the archive,
yeah,
the
yeah.
archive. But you're in
No.
charge of the
But
taxes.
but the one but the one that is more related with the story and with the narrative and the selection of colors is something that we always talk.
Exactly.
You
No,
know, we are involved.
And something that we learned when we first saw the pieces that we created together, and speaking about solving conflicts, something that really helped me understand and to go kind of beyond the ego barrier of like, I'm right, I have the right decision, or was to look at the work and see the work and analyze the work and see what does the work need. It doesn't have to do with me being right or Gabriel being right. It has to do with the work. Like, if we are both thinking that we want the best for the project, then that really helps move the conflict forward, like push against that barrier, because it's about what we are looking at, and we can be objective, like stepping away, discussing what the project needs, and then making the decision not based on our will or desire, but on what we are looking at. And I think this has created a space of trust, and honestly now it's a lot more fluid. Like with the years it became really fluid. Of course there are moments of tension, but I think it's beautiful when now we trust each other, and Gabriel might have been in charge completely of some of the works here. Like, we don't know, like, you will never know, but but for me it's like he was inspired, and like we were both drinking the same water in a sense, you know? We were both thinking with the same vocabulary that we have created together.
Yeah, also like something that we decided for the first project was to have like this conversation through drawings. So we have this notebook, and I start like drawing something, and then I gave Fernanda this first lines, and then she replied like by adding those, and then I take back like this drawing, and that was like the first the first compositions. You know, it was very much based like into this like a kind of like a
Back and forth.
like back and forth, exactly. But through the years, it had been like this vocabulary is already there. Like we already understand what is like a celeste universe. So sometimes Fernanda is coming with one drawing that like is like a new vision or something, and for me it's like
it works.
That's perfect. You know, that's enough. Like I don't want to add nothing. Like maybe in the next project I can develop like something like out of like this new perspective. But at this moment, this is enough. This is good.
Yeah, I mean, there's this very like clearly like intuitive aspect of the work.
Yes.
But then there's also a lot of like research that goes into it. You know, all of your projects. I mean, this one in particular, you make reference to this mural by Diego Rivera, which is this mural that he actually did for a swimming, where it's like a pool, you know?
Yeah, like a
So
container
it's like
of
a
water.
container of water. So it's like a mural that's kind of like meant to be seen partially in and out, you know, of
Exactly.
the water. So I mean, obviously, you know, you have an interest in like architecture and like how, you know, built space affects the human body. Yeah, so I'm just kind of curious to learn about what's your relationship to like muralism, particularly like Diego Rivera, because as like Mexicans, we all have to like contend with that. I mean, I always get asked if I was named after Diego Rivera. I was not.
Sorry,
Good to know. We all have to contend it in our own way. We'll unpack that later. But yeah, in terms of like thinking of like muralism built in space and how it is that informs, yeah, like our, you know, the human body, but also there's something very like pedagogical specifically about Diego Rivera's mural in the sense of its use of imagery, you know, specifically, you know, indigenous culture.
Yeah.
So yes, I'm curious to hear more about your relationship to like muralism,
Yeah.
and then specifically to Rivera.
Yeah.
Well, just so like something to add, like what you were describing, like related with muralism, is because muralism, started as a political project. So that's why, like, all this pedagogical aspect, like, on it, and I think that's like a big difference, like, with where we are at this moment, or the way that we approach, like to this artistic movement.
But also, since we are working with large scale, in a sense, like immersive, enveloping installations. At first, we were not thinking about murals at all. But then eventually, you show it the work, and one people mentions it, and you're like, oh, interesting. Like, and then also we have access to a lot of murals in Mexico City. Like, most of the main city buildings have murals in them. It was a huge movement. Even like schools would have murals that are harder to access. Like, the city has a lot of murals to look at, and it's something that it's nice to have access to. And you can go and interact with them. And so we started visiting them again, more consciously, to see how they were wrapping space and how they were constructing a narrative and how they were kind of creating a very complex image within just one wall or many walls within a building. And then we were not expecting to become such fans of Diego's work, because, you know, also as a historical figure and the counterpart of Frida Kahlo, so Frida's now very popular worldwide and her work is being recognized, but in the moment that where they were both creating, she was the painter's wife, and she had a note in the papers like, the painter's wife also paints, like, and now she's like the big superstar, and he's becoming more of like Frida's husband. Yeah. But thinking with this like historical mindset, like we were not as attracted to the character, and also thinking that since muralism was a political project, he painted all the main spaces, like government official buildings were painted by Diego, and then you start to learn that he was also a machine. He painted so much and so fast that he took over most of the spaces. He would barely leave any other walls for other painters. You know, like it's crazy. So that's hard to process. But then you go see the work, and then you're seeing his creations, and it's very impressive. And then, in particular, this mural in Cárcamo, we had already the idea for the project. We were already like working on it. We knew we were going to have windows, but we were not sure what the windows were showing. And then in one of those days where you need to break like the stagnant energy when you're not moving forward, we visited the Cárcamo again, and it was like, it's here. And we saw the painting, and we created that one. And we understood, because, well, I'll let you know how it relates. But now it became like the main source of information and inspiration for the contents of the project. And also, this mural was supposed to be covered by water. They took the water out, redirected the water flows, and then they restored the mural. And now you can see it empty, but there's a sound installation in the space by Ariel Gusic that brings the water into the space in a more ethereal way. So it's beautiful how it kind of honors the water flow, and that was the main idea for this project. So it was like, cling.
Yeah. So that was the first work that was made for the show?
Well, more like this image was a direct result of our visit to Cárcamo. And those two, well, I think all the paintings actually, except for the main installation.
The main installation could be like the first work that we imagined, like for this exhibition, because as you mentioned, we usually work like knowing the architectural space. So we work like having the floor plans in here, so this these curves that they are like going around the exhibition space were like planned, like to be like in that precision that it is at this moment, because we were like that it was like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I think kind of like moving away from like I guess like more like hard architecture, like in the sense of how, you know, the painted form relates to like muralism, and you all are working with, you know, like cotton and like fabric. So I was wondering if you can maybe speak a little bit about this choice, because it is a recurring material, you know, the textile.
Yeah, true. And I think that is a close again is like with the origin of what is Celeste about it, but also like this first exhibition that it was like resembling our house, the atmosphere or our home. So we want to bring like something that it felt like warm, that you felt that you felt like kind of like secure, somehow like a shelter. So that's why the selection of this material, like cotton canvas, which is like a very like easy access material. Also, like we are covered with cotton, like with our clothes. So this kind of like a proximity, like this kind of like familiarity, like with the material, was something like important, like in the choice of cotton canvas. But then also we realized that out of like this very like a common material, you are able to create like tents, canopies, tablecloths, like many other like possibilities that also brings the intention of bring people over, you know, like for gatherings, for picnics, for protection. So this material is like connected with these intentions for us.
And then it has, well, because we didn't thought about it when we started working with fabric, but it's very portable. It rolls, it folds. Like you can pack it in a very small package and ship it. And we played with the idea of that, and we created a traveling tent. And it has traveled to like 3 locations.
3 locations.
So that's like something that we were dreaming of, and that it's easy to make happen, because also like moving art across borders can be hard. But and actually moving textiles in and out of Mexico is very hard. But that note aside, it's just very nice and relaxing to know that this won't break during transit. Like there's something that's very like kind,
like resilient.
Resilient. That's a nice word. The flexibility of textiles to like
And also like with the possibility of to scale to a larger dimension, and at the end you just pack everything in one suitcase. That's like a fascinating still, and of course is in opposite to this like a very heavy architecture where murals exist like at this moment. So all this painting that can be like interpreted or seen as a mural as well is like a portable, it's flexible.
Yeah. Well, I feel like this kind of like almost like modular aspect of the work, maybe at least for me, kind of puts it maybe closer to like language, in the sense that it's something that can always be changing, and like you said, like moving it from one, you know, city or country to another, like it's always evolving. So it is more like a discourse in a way. And I know that a lot of the times when you do your, you know, installations, oftentimes there's like a public component to it, like a component of like gathering, as we were mentioning earlier, from like hosting friends at your house. So I'm wondering if you can maybe speak a little bit more about kind of like the more like political, social ramifications of the work, which again, maybe that ties it a little bit to muralism again.
So yes, I mean, it depends on the space that is hosting our work. But if we can, we would like to create kind of an invitation for a gathering or a type of encounter. I think at first it started very simple with like, oh, let's put food on the table and invite people over, or let's do a picnic, or let's do like this day out underneath a canopy and just like a gathering. And then these needs started to evolve into another type of encounter. And we started working with children in 2023. We were invited to do this residency with very young children, and it was more about adapting our language and our practice to do like art classes for little children with the materials that were available in hand, which of course were not like fancy art materials, but it was more about like bringing our vision of the world to them and playing through our art.
And was this at the Jumex Museum in Mexico?
That was before.
Oh,
That was before. So it was a residency by Ruta del Castor. These are a group that connect social causes, art, and like funders, like to make like art social projects happen. They are beautiful. And then Jumex invited us to create this program of workshops with a group of elementary school kids, and with the aim of creating a theater backdrop for the Mother's Day Festival. That was exactly a year ago.
Together with the children.
With the children. So we co-created with the children, and the children painted, and we needed to kind of imagine the workshops in a way that would start adding to the idea of a curtain, and how do you open up your conversation, to your process with children, how do you make them feel seen, you know, and present within the work, and how like we're in charge, but we don't want to completely take over, but then also you're negotiating with the museum who expects something that kind of looks like what you do. And everyone was really nice in this project. It's a project of love, but we co-created with the children, and this possibility of also creating spaces for learning, it's something that we're not completely there yet, but it's always something that we're thinking, like how can we open up our conflict resolution skills, like, right, or like what we have learned in the process of creating, so that other people can participate, and it's also challenging our process in a way.
Because also like this project, like by working with children, opened this third part of Celeste. You know, it's not that every project is like that, but specifically for this one, it was like it's not only a piece by Celeste. Like Celeste created like a more like a framework, like to work with someone else. You know? So yeah, in that sense, like our practice, like our way of like doing and this conversation and so on is also exploring like the possibility of open up someone else.
We have collaborated with like other creators, friends, more like in books, for example, and that has really also made us understand that like we are always, we have an advantage because we are always working together, and to really be fair play with someone else collaborating, like the real community making practice, it's a whole nother story. Like this is just the beginning, but it's just good to kind of unfold the self, and to, it's just the seed, because there's so much more work to do if we really need to want to kind of expand the collaborating process.
So that feels kind of like the organic next step, maybe.
Maybe, but it's very challenging, to be honest. But it's also like the goal, you know, like
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, in looking at a lot of the shapes that are here, you know, there's these like arches, there are essentially these like portals. In a way, like these kind of like different like vanishing points. There's also like the copper, which is like a conduit, you know. So again, like so much, as you know, we've been talking right now, it has to deal with like mediation. So yes, I'm just thinking about, with like the title of the exhibition, like Hacer brotar, to like to sprout. It really kind of evokes in me like to kind of like to trigger something, you know. So, you know, what do you hope for all of us that were here to kind of like hacer brotar within us?
Oh wow.
That's an intense one, but beautiful, yeah.
Yeah.
Take your time.
Yeah. Well,
And it's also like, maybe that's more a question for you as an audience member, you know, because I mean that's really more a question for them. Like,
But I would, sorry. Go ahead.
No?
No, but I will say, and it's not like you should go, or I can explain it more, but like to take care, you know,
Yeah.
like to care. That's what is hacer brotar, to sprout, you know, like care. So
Yeah, we were thinking of like, okay, so the whole concept for the project is to kind of create like a canal for the water, like a road for the water, like a waterway to kind of guide the water to go where it needs to go to make something sprout. That was our imagining behind it, and it has to do with kind of caring for life or like caring for like the earth. I mean, it sounds so like
No, but it's within the work in the sense of, you know, even from like Diego Rivera's project, you know, it being like a cistern,
exactly.
you know, for water, you know, designed by the city.
Mhm.
But then even before then, just like Mexico City, you know,
Mhm.
before it was Mexico City. And I
Yeah,
know that
exactly.
a lot of Nahuatl imagery
Yeah.
and just like Nahuatl cosmovision influences a lot of your work, you know, specifically with like the 3 sculptures that are, you know, on that
Yeah.
wall over there, the ones that are made of copper.
Mhm.
So yes, I guess maybe like pivoting towards that, like how does, you know,
Yeah.
Nahuatl culture or like cosmovision, like, influence your thinking and
Yeah.
the works in this exhibition in particular?
okay.
Yeah, that one is a very recent one that we've started looking into the history of the city that we live in. A big reference is this poet, Nezahualcóyotl. He was known as the king poet. And he also is famous for creating an aqueduct that directed the water flow to what is now the main park in Mexico City, the Chapultepec Forest. So he created this waterway because he was expert in creating waterways to make gardens, because one way that he lived his life honoring the gods was to create poetry, beauty, gardens, dancing, like all those things were very important for his people. And when we learned about that and when we started reading his poetry and the way they kind of understand the practice of being an artist in a sense, like today that would be being an artist, you know, like you're dedicating your life to creating beauty and creating these spaces that trigger maybe reflection or just like joy, you know. Something even more simple is important. So that started connecting us with the whole like history of the city before the Spanish people were there, and like even before the Aztecs, because the Aztecs were the last big like civilization that kind of conquered all the others. But before, there's a very rich history, and it's just interesting because it's reflected in the city. Once you start learning, you start seeing the names of the streets and like just it's all over that area of the world. Yeah, so it's a good reference, and the bases have names in Nahuatl. It was kind of like just a very specific decision for the bases because they kind of present concepts in a sense. You know, like like this concept and this other that might translate directly to Spanish or English or might not. You know, like
And can you maybe tell us like what are the names of the pieces?
Yeah, I always forget the one in the
middle.
In the middle, but the one if you are looking at them like in front of them, like the one on the left side is Anahuac, and Anahuac means like surrounded by water, and that's like the original name of what is known as Mexico City. So Anahuac City, like it was at first. So Anahuac. The one in the middle is.
it's a translation for navel. No,
The translation is navel.
Chicli.
Yeah, and the last one on the right, that's Olin or Ojin. I don't know how to pronounce correctly. Olin, I think it is, and it's movement. Is translated as movement. So all of them again are connected with these ideas related with water, like movement, like the origin, like the nipple.
Yeah, it's like the belly button.
Exactly. That's
Exactly. So yeah, it was like a like a kind of like honoring like this research
Mhm.
that we are like ongoing. But also I think when we start Celeste, like again to the myth of origin and us living together at first and so on, I think those references were not like there, like very present. So had been like this kind of like a decolonization of our minds, you know, like to look at these references that we are like living with, like very closely, and to feel like a kind of like a proud, like somehow, like you know, like about all this history, about all this development, about all this knowledge, and that's something that is very present in Diego Rivera's murals as well.
Yeah.
And throughout the city too, like a lot of the landmarks actually have, like throughout Mexico City, if you see like like an important landmark, it has a lot of the times this symbol that you like reference, no? Which is kind of like, it's like star almost.
Yeah, exactly. And then we visited Texcoco, where Nezahualcóyotl is from, and this guy gave us a really quick tour, and he explained that these civilizations, they were used to working with water. These were lagoons, and they had different levels of salt in them, and so different type of life was created in different types of lagoons. And they would eat all these insects, like water insects, like they would eat them, and those would be their nutrition and food. Even algae would be their food. So they were used to working with the environment in a way that was more balanced. And it was when the Spanish came and they were more used to working on dry land for agriculture that they started drying the lagoons to have more agricultural land. And eventually it's the city that you know now that has barely any canals left. But like in the origin, it's so important because it's also why it shakes so much in Mexico City, because of the soil is very like jelly. So that's why like it's present in the way we experience the city today. You know, like that's a mark that will always be there. Yeah. Yeah. So that's a reference.
Yeah, I don't know how we're doing on time, or should we open up to the public? Yeah. Like I don't know if, well, thank you so much for
Thank you,
sharing all
Diego,
these.
for like very
Any questions?
notes.
People can find you in the,
Yeah, that
you know.
too.
Right.
Go ahead.
I really enjoyed your talk, and all of the references are so rich. But I've been really intrigued by the imagery behind you, because I can see like definitely waterways and canals. There's like a watery feel to it, but it also looks like a chain link fence, which is like a more industrial kind of image. Is that intentional at all, or not at all? No.
Not at all, but it's a nice note. This was the most recent painting. I mean, for us, it has to do with like the prints in the water on a river, but also it's like kind of connecting this red line, like the thread that kind of goes around the whole exhibition, and creating another type of weaving situation. But the fence, that's intense. It's good. It's good to have like everything come up, because in a way it's just like a very common shape of.
Yeah, I mean, I also thought of a fence too, and I don't know, we've been in San Francisco too long.
Yeah. Well, it's also like thinking about the way that nature informs the things that we create, like whether we intend it or not. And so,
True.
yeah, living in cities, I'm always noticing like patterns and things that refer back to the environment.
That's interesting. You know, like today in the morning we were to see the Ruth Asawa exhibition, and like this kind of like weaving like out of like the metal wire. Yeah, of course it's like a close by.
But the fence has like this very
Yeah, I know.
like I would have thought more of like a fishing net.
Like enlarged.
Yeah, enlarged. But yeah.
But I don't know, but I think there's still like a very like soft quality, because it's still like a textile. There's still like mending in it, you know.
And also, when we do the process of of the other two paintings, before sending them to the seamstress that we work with, we put it all together with safety pins, And we saw how the fabric kind of, there's an image of that in the gallery's Instagram. And the fabric before sewing has a lot of depth and shadows. And we were with this one thinking, how can we preserve that? And also kind of give it some structure because it's already so loose that, so we experimented more with this one and we attached the edges to the fabric, to the main fabric, but left certain parts like to kind of preserve the depth and give it this like very fluid quality too.
Yeah, and that also is like a kind of like our experimentation with sewing and fabric. That like maybe the next things it could be like there is like a no sewing.
Super loose,
you know,
yeah.
it's like it will be like a different composition.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, this is really interesting. Thank you so much. It's nice to meet you guys. I was just curious. You'd mentioned that you were interested in having it be kind of like your living room. And I'm wondering, do you ever use anything that's involving cooking or like spices with the colors? You know, maybe like a cumin base or like a pepper or something that's from Mexico that might be mixing the colors of all this, red and orange.
Yeah. Well, now normally we use regular fabric dyes. We don't work with natural dyes anymore. And if we did a meal, we would include the spices, but with the pigmenting process, it's more like art materials. It's more like, not as experimental in that sense. Yeah.
Cool.
Well,
Thank you
we're
so much.
going to be here, so.
Congratulations. Yeah, you'll be around.